First, Friday night, the opener. Now, for those who haven't been to Bremen, there's good news and bad news. There's good news. The good news is that it's a very compact city. You can land at the airport, and 12 minutes later, you can be at the stadium, courtesy of a taxi drive. The bad news is if your flight has 1.5 hours delay and you land at 8:10, you still can miss the first goal, as I did. But I still witnessed 3 more goals, and I witnessed Harry Kane's debut in the Bundesliga for Bayern. And for once, very happy Bayern Munich faces, because as Christoph said, and I'm sure Ronnie would have enjoyed, Bayern were in full crisis mode going into this game, or in semi-crisis mode after that very demoralizing and concerning 3-0 defeat against Leipzig in the Super Cup. But courtesy of Werder Bremen's very poor defending and some good stuff, here they are, top of the table after a 4-0 win. I'm going to tell you
Not top of the table. Top of the table.
Stuttgart, yeah, of course. Here they are, second spot in the table after that 4-0 win. And everything is fine again and rosy again in the Bayern Munich garden. Now, I'm going to tell you what I thought in a second. Ronnie, as an interested observer, did you have a chance to check out this game? What do you make of Bayern and Harry Kane?
Well, I'm sure we will try hard to find some negativity about the game, but
you will, yeah.
We will. We try hard. We will struggle, but we try hard. But I thought I've seen this kind of Bayern game a million of times. They looked better than the opponent in every department. They were too quick for the opponents. Their passing was too sharp, and the opponent was desperate to hang on when they were 1-0 down. And you thought, okay, this is a typical Bayern game. In the end, they win 2-0 or 3-0. But what's different this time was my perspective, because after all those Bayern crises in the last weeks and months, the very moment when Bremen seemed to have a chance after the start of the second half, for 10 minutes they were pressing a bit higher. They created 2 or 3 half-decent chances. I thought, here we go again. Bayern will suffer again. They will blow it again. And it was interesting. It was sadly they didn't, but it was interesting to see that their manager, Thomas Tuchel, seemed to think the same time. Because after the game, in the post-match interviews, he repeated like 3 times, we showed some consistency today. We showed some consistency today. We showed some consistency today. So he himself must have suffered in the last games from that moments when Bayern was just giving it away, when they were falling apart. And he seemed to be just relieved that it was different this time, that they really hold on even in this 10 minutes of Bremen attacks. And, in the end, managed to win convincingly.
Ronnie, eine Sekunde, Christoph. Just a quick point on that. Yeah, Ronnie, I think you're right. There was a huge emphasis on Bayern's defensive work. All the players talking about the clean sheet before the game, how important it was for Tuchel. It was interesting because he was constantly asking Joshua Kimmich and Leon Goretzka to play close together and to just, of course, when they don't have the ball, to really protect the centre-backs, because Bayern played with very high fullbacks in this game, so they kept both Goretzka and Kimmich back, and he tried to keep them almost on the same line, which for a Bayern team is a very defensive setup. But I guess it worked because Bremen didn't create much, and of course, going forward, Bayern were very good, especially on the flanks.
My impression was that there is that this Bayern team could play much better, because especially in the offensive part of it, there were a lot of wrong decision taking by players. So they were dribbling when they should pass, they were passing when they should dribble, and so on. And there were many great situations that they were giving away And I think that adds to the bad news that they looked good, but could easily be much better if they really become consistent and maybe their confidence grows. What do you think, Raphael?
There was definitely an element of that, especially because you felt that they wanted to find Harry Kane, and Harry Kane wanted to be found. Now, he was very good, of course, creating that first goal, which was one of those rare counterattacks that Bayern enjoyed. Most of the time, Bremen were very deep and very defensive. But when they had less spaces, Kane was looking for spaces. He was playing sort of a little bit outside on the right, trying to find a bit of space. And often the communication, the combination between him and Bayern broke down very, very often. And it was clear to see that they're still trying to get used to each other, which is normal. But there were other incidents when, especially Leroy Sané, who I didn't think had a great game, despite his 2 goals, could have handled the ball better, could have had a better, as you said, better decision-making. At the same time, I thought it was very encouraging to see Alphonso Davies so effective. He's been going through a pretty rough spell. Some people might say over the last 1.5 years. This was much more like the real Alphonso Davies. Kingsley Coman, also on that left side, had a great game, really good game. And there's signs that Jamal Musiala is coming back, which also I think makes a huge difference for Bayern. Most of the time, they have to find spaces between the lines, and he is the best player they have, able to do that, picking up the ball and then running at defenders from tight angles, and that makes such a difference if you have a player like that. And again, what was interesting with Tuchel afterwards, he talked about the one-to-ones. He said, we can't always think, and I think he was maybe referring to critics as well, that everything can be solved through positioning, through passing, through tactics. Sometimes, or often, you just have to beat your man in the final third. That's when things happen. That's when things open up. And Bayern really did that, especially on the left. And I think that made a big difference. And in the end, made it a deserved win, even if it perhaps was a little bit, the result was perhaps a little bit too emphatic considering how Bayern's performance was.
Ronnie, we haven't, Raphael hasn't talked much about Harry Kane because I think, although there were sometimes problems that Raphael has described, the link up with the other players, I had the impression that he easily adjusted to this Bayern team. How did you see it?
Well, he certainly didn't look out of place. I mean, he started perfectly with when Bayern was counter-attacking after a few minutes, and just with one flick on, he opened the path for Leroy Sané on goal, and he scored. That was a typical Harry Kane situation, that he really can be a player that with one touch can change the whole situation or can change a game. I think he looked part of the team. Yes, I think that's fair to say. And there were glimpses, moments where you could realize when you were searching for it that he really is what we all know, a world-class striker. Which in a way is interesting, that the Bundesliga itself always had the feeling in the last few years that it's a bit second-rate to the Premier League, but they always had fantastic strikers. I mean, they had Lewandowski, they had Haaland, and it's still to be seen if Harry Kane can perform on that level like the two of them did in the last few years. But you certainly could get a feeling to realize, okay, that's why they signed Harry Kane. He can make a difference for them.
Raphael, last question concerning all this. Was Harry Kane a surprise that it's so loud in German stadiums?
I don't know if he was surprised, but he was certainly hugely complimentary about the atmosphere in the stadium, saying it beat the odd Premier League game. Ronnie has an interesting theory on this. He always says in the Premier League that the fans, they watch the game more. And it's wrong to say that they're more quiet. They're just more observant, and they get excited when there's things to get excited about, and when there isn't, they keep watching. Which I think there's a big element of truth in that. Of course, in the Bundesliga, you have a different atmosphere, influenced by the Italian ultra movement, where the idea is that you have to scream and shout and sing for 90 minutes. And certainly the Bremen home support was very impressive, but also the Bayern ones made their presence felt. And there were flares, there were all the things that the league doesn't like, but actually neutrals secretly do enjoy quite a lot. And yeah, it was a great atmosphere, despite the slightly one-sided nature of the contest.
But German football seems to be a kind of, let's say, split personality these days. You know, you got a feeling whenever you watch the national side, even the female national side these days, German football is in crisis. People are not that interested anymore. German football has passed the pinnacle of interest. But then you go back to the Bundesliga, and all the stadiums are now full. They are sold out. And as you said, the people are really happy to support their team, make a big noise. I think Frankfurt started a lot of those things, that like the whole stadium coming to the game wearing the team colors, like it was in Stuttgart on Saturday. The whole stadium was white. Everybody was wearing a white T-shirt. So it seems, on one hand, people are tired of football, and on the other hand, they can't get enough of football.
I think that's exactly right. Especially the Bundesliga is booming. It might not be reflected in next year's TV rights, which is going to be very, very interesting. But certainly, as far as the local domestic indicators is concerned, the season ticket sales, the amount of excitement that exists going into the new season, I would completely agree with you, Ronnie.